Today we're breaking down The Occupant 2025, a chilling survival thriller full of grief, hallucination, and desperation. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit subscribe and ring the bell, so you don't miss any pulse-pounding recaps like this. The movie opens with a haunting shot of a dark, empty cave before cutting to Abby, a young woman deeply bonded with her older sister, Beth. Ever since their mother passed, the two have leaned completely on each other. Their father is still around and cares for them, but it's Beth who has always been Abby's rock, more like a mother than a sister. Then tragedy hits. Beth is diagnosed with cancer, and doctors say she doesn't have long to live. Abby refuses to accept that. Desperate to save her sister, she hears about a biotech company developing an experimental treatment that could cure cancer, but the cost is way out of her reach. Determined to find a way, Abby takes a dangerous but high-paying job, even though everyone warns her not to. The story moves to the Georgian Caucasus, a rugged mountain region caught between Russia and the Black Sea, parts of it still under Russian control. There, Abby works as a geologist hired to search for uranium. It's risky work, but it pays well. Months pass and she finds nothing useful while Beth's health keeps getting worse. One day, Abby suggests they search deeper into the mountains, but her colleague refuses, reminding her that beyond that area is Russian territory, strictly off-limits. Frustrated and running out of time, Abby later gets a call from her father, who scolds her for taking so many risks. Still, with no money and no advance from her company, she feels trapped. The next morning, after another failed dig, Abby insists on pushing further into the nearby forest. Her colleague warns her about wild animals and refuses to go. Abby demands his gun, determined to continue alone. Against her colleague's warnings, she moves through the misty woods. That's when she spots something, a strange black stone lying on the forest floor. Drawn to its odd shine, she picks it up, feeling something off about it. Back at the base, Abby studies the stone in secret. It's unlike anything she's ever seen before. She becomes convinced it could be worth millions, enough to pay for Beth's treatment. So she hides it from the company, not realizing the danger she's just brought upon herself. Just then, Abby gets a call from her father. Beth's condition has taken a turn for the worse. She knows she has to go home immediately. Telling her colleague she might not return, Abby boards a helicopter and leaves the site. As they fly over Ossetia, the pilot talks about how he once lived there with his family before Russian forces took over 15 years ago. The moment feels quiet, almost nostalgic, until Abby spots something strange in the sky. It looks like a flock of birds, but it moves too fast and too precisely. Before she can react, the object collides with the helicopter, killing the power and sending it crashing down. When Abby wakes up, she's bruised and disoriented. One of the pilots is dead, the other badly hurt. She does what she can, presses on his wounds, checks for a pulse, tries the radio, but nothing works. They're stranded in the middle of nowhere. The nearest road is about 60 kilometers away, and fear starts to creep in. That night, she lights a fire, hoping someone might see the smoke, but no help comes. By morning, the second pilot is gone too. Panic sets in, but Abby knows she can't just sit there and wait to die. She gathers what she can from the wreckage: food, water, a gun, and makes up her mind to find her way back and reach Beth. As she's about to leave, she hears a faint crackle of static. Hopeful, she follows the sound and she finds a working walkie-talkie among the pilot's gear. It's weak but alive. Using the helicopter's battery, she charges it and soon picks up a voice. A man named John was on the other end. He says he's also a crash survivor somewhere nearby. His leg is pinned and he can't move. His antenna is broken, which means no one can find him unless someone gets to his location. Abby checks her map and spots a lake about 30 kilometers north. It matches John's description. She decides to go, hoping that if she can reach him, maybe together they can find a way out, or at least call for help. John warns Abby not to go north. He insists she should keep moving south instead because the area up north is too dangerous, and he doubts his radio will work there. But Abby decides to risk it. Going south would take too long, and she needs to get back to Beth as soon as possible. The path ahead is rough and full of steep climbs, slowing her down. As Abby moves through the mountains, John keeps talking to her through the radio, asking about her life. When she mentions she's a geologist, he immediately guesses she's out there searching for uranium. She's surprised but admits it's true. She eventually opens up about Beth's illness and how she's doing this job to save her. John, who says he's a pilot, hints that he was also on a special mission before his crash, though he doesn't explain what kind. When night falls, Abby builds a small shelter to rest and hide from the rain. She takes out the strange black stone again and studies it under the dim light. To her shock, The object begins to shift and change shape in her hand as if it were alive or made of some kind of advanced technology. The sight makes her uneasy. Meanwhile, John's calmness over the radio starts to bother her. Even while trapped and injured, he speaks with no fear of dying, almost like he's at peace. By morning, Abby pushes on, struggling through exhaustion. John keeps talking, his constant chatter slowly wearing her down. At one point, she snaps at him, saying the battery will die if he doesn't stop talking. That day, Abby reaches a steep cliff she needs to climb. She tells John how tough and high it looks. He says if she wants to turn back, he'll understand. He tells her that she tried her best and hopes her sister gets better. Abby replies that Beth isn't improving, and John quietly says she can't save everyone. His words hit a nerve. Angry, Abby tells him she doesn't need his advice, just his silence. John simply says she should do whatever she thinks is right. Abby starts climbing. The rocks crumble beneath her hands, and the higher she goes, the harder it gets. Suddenly, she hears John's voice again, soft and strange this time, saying, "You're my favorite." Before she can respond, the radio goes silent. She shakes off the unease and keeps climbing, but her knife slips from her hand and falls into the ravine. Desperate, she remembers the mysterious stone in her pocket. She grips it tightly and watches as it reshapes itself into a sharp tool as she moves her fingers through it. Abby uses it to carve a hole into the rock and pull herself up. Then she ties her rope to it and makes it to the top. Abby looks around but sees nothing promising. The strange black stone still lingers in her mind, but she doesn't have time to stop and think about it. Through her binoculars, she spots those same dark objects and, in the distance, a military base. Before moving on, she lights a small fire and draws a big arrow in the snow, hoping that if anyone comes looking, they'll know which way she went. Just as she starts moving again, John's voice suddenly comes through the radio. Angry, she yells at him, demanding to know why he went silent. John warns her not to go any farther. He says she's heading into enemy territory and that anyone who crosses that line gets shot on sight. He insists no help will come from that direction. The warning makes Abby's heart race. Then, out of nowhere, her foot slips. She tumbles down a slope, landing hard and injuring her leg. Gritting her teeth, she wraps her leg tightly with a strip of cloth and forces herself to keep going. As night falls, she finds a small village up ahead. Snow is falling heavily and the cold bites deep into her skin. Desperate for shelter, she limps into the village only to find it completely abandoned. She enters one of the old houses to spend the night. Hungry, she searches the kitchen and finds some food, but it's all spoiled. Exhausted, she treats her wounded leg and injects a dose of morphine to ease the pain. As she drifts to sleep, she dreams of visiting Beth in the hospital, her sister lying pale and weak but smiling faintly. When Abby wakes the next morning, she hears a sound outside. Her instincts kick in. She goes out to investigate and sees a Russian soldier nearby, scanning the area. Fear grips her. She quietly hides behind a broken shelf as the soldier grows suspicious and steps into the house to search. Abby clutched her gun tightly as the soldier stepped inside. Panic took over and she fired, hitting him in the leg. He hadn't even tried to hurt her. Breathing hard, she grabbed his rifle and demanded his bag. Inside, she found something that made her blood run cold, another black stone just like the one she already had. Then, from the soldier's walkie-talkie, a voice came through. It was a man named Ivan. But as soon as Abby heard him speak, she froze. It was the same voice as John's. Realization hit her hard. John and Ivan were the same person, and somehow both men and the stones were connected. Furious, Abby shouted into the radio, demanding to know who he really was. But there was only silence. In frustration, she hurled the radio aside. Still, she couldn't leave the wounded soldier to die. She patched him up and told him that if he wanted her help, he needed to take her to the base. The soldier, who had been wandering alone looking for shelter, agreed. He too had been in contact with John, though neither of them truly understood what was going on. They couldn't speak each other's language, but both knew they had no choice but to rely on one another. Abby told him their path would lead to the lake. She helped him walk even though every step made him wince in pain. Deep down, she knew she wouldn't have shot him if John hadn't filled her head with fear about the Russians. At one point, when they stopped to rest, frustration got the better of her. Abby threw the strange stone away and told the soldier they had to keep moving. They pressed forward through the snow until suddenly the ice beneath them cracked. The soldier plunged into freezing water. Hearing his cries, Abby rushed to help, but the ground gave way under her too and she fell into a pit. She clawed her way out, shivering and soaked to the bone, calling for the soldier, but there was no answer. Alone and freezing, she stripped off her wet clothes, desperate to stay warm. That's when John's voice came through the radio again. Furious, Abby ripped out the battery and threw it away, but somehow his voice still echoed in her head, calm and taunting. Eventually, exhaustion won. Abby drifted into sleep, dreaming of the happier days she'd spent with Beth. When she woke, the distant thump of helicopter blades filled the air. Hope surged through her as she stood, weak but determined, and staggered toward the sound, screaming for help. But the sound of the blades was all in her head. Her strength gave out as she stumbled and fell into a cave, the same one shown at the start of the film. Steam rose from a hot spring where her body floated silently. Next to her, a pale corpse lay still, its identity unclear. The corpse was nothing but bones and rotting flesh. It was the body of a soldier, and on his badge was the name John. As Abby stared in shock, the strange black particles from the stone began to move on their own, slowly attaching themselves to her skin. She felt her body grow heavy, her vision blurred, and then everything went dark. When she opened her eyes again, she was no longer in the cave. She was floating in a strange, glowing space surrounded by hundreds of the same black stones, all pulsing with life. Then she heard a familiar voice, John's. He told her that he had been trapped in this place 65 years ago. That's how he found them. Abby soon realized the truth. The helicopter crash hadn't been an accident. Something had brought her here on purpose. The stones weren't just rocks. They were alive, or at least some kind of advanced technology. Maybe alien, maybe something older. They had existed on Earth for a long time, either imprisoned underground or hidden by choice. And while they weren't evil, they were far beyond human understanding. John explained that he had once been dying too. But instead of fighting, he surrendered himself to the stones, and in return they gave him life. His body was no longer flesh. It was made of the same material as the stones. I'm a survivor just like you, he told her. But now I'm part of them. You can be too. Abby shook her head. She wanted no part of it. She just wanted to go home. And suddenly she was home. She saw her sister Beth smiling, healthy again. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Deep down, Abby knew it wasn't real. It was just an illusion created by the stones to make her stay. Still, she couldn't help but embrace the moment. She embraced her sister, looked into her eyes, and spoke from her heart, saying everything she'd wanted to say but never got the chance to. In the end, Abby finally understood something she had been running from all along. That death isn't the end, but a natural part of life. The alien stones kept trying to make her surrender willingly, promising peace, but she refused to give in. She picked up the walkie-talkie and said she knew how many lives the stones had already claimed. Then she dropped it. Her imaginary sister stood still, pleading with her not to leave. But Abby knew what was real and what wasn't. She opened the door of her home and stepped outside into a raging snowstorm. A series of flashing lights followed, suggesting that someone had finally found her. When Abby opened her eyes again, she was lying in an apartment. It belonged to Sergei, her old college friend. He told her she had been rescued after days of searching. But even then, Abby's only wish was to go home to see her sister one last time. The next day she returned home. Beth was fading fast, her breaths weak and shallow. Abby held her hand, their father by her side. In those final moments, the sisters shared a quiet peace. Beth smiled softly before closing her eyes. And with that, the film ends. That's a wrap on our breakdown of The Occupant. What do you think about this movie? Drop your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss one of our thrilling movie analyses and deep dives. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay tuned for more edge of your seat content.